So today my conversation is around how do we bring ICT innovations to life in healthcare? And I think the first thing I'd like to do is to help you join the dots. I think what tends to happen as entrepreneurs, you start a project and somebody will say you're an entrepreneur and you're an innovator, but you start because, as he mentioned, you're passionate about this product or passionate about something. But the challenge you have is your passion cannot translate to an economic output. So you're passionate, so you die with a great product which you build, but nobody really cared about the product. The next thing, you build a product that does not fit within a large ecosystem. How do you plug yourself into an ecosystem and make yourself relevant within that ecosystem? And I can see some of the medical people in the medical industry can see that. Maybe they understand, how do I fit in this bigger ecosystem? The next thing is, how do I see the bigger picture? How do I connect the dots? How can I join the dots? And today, I think what I'm trying to do today is sort of inspire you to figure out, how can I join the dots? Where is the opportunity to do that? Where is the opportunity in Kenya today? Because the opportunity is there. And I can tell you, if I look at the 5 areas I could invest in today, if I was an innovator, which I am, but if I was younger and had a lot of time on my hands, I think I would invest in areas of health, education, I would invest in social services, I would invest in energy, I would invest in agriculture. So if you today, if Kenya could become the Silicon Valley we're looking for, I think the areas we sort of need to look at is financial services, where we're already good at. Health is an area where you're clear, know that you could create a differentiation. Because Africa healthcare systems are very different from global healthcare systems. But they're in that complexity and that differentiation, that lies your opportunity. And to start with that is I'll go to this big picture. I've just extracted this from an American ecosystem. And you can see there are multiple players in this whole pyramid of actors. Now, you need to ask yourself, where do you fit in? And where can you add value within this ecosystem? You can see here, this is the patient. At the heart of everything is a patient. At the heart of anything is a patient. At the same time, you have what we call payers. Payers, these could be your insurance companies, who are the people who pay for healthcare services on your behalf. Around here in Kenya today, and I'm going to talk about Kenya, there are very many problems, settlement problems around here. Anybody in the medical industry knows this is a major problem in the country today. If you talk to any CEO today, in a paying company, they'll tell you that if you come and help them solve a problem within their organization, it's an area that you could innovate under. There's also hospitals. Within the hospitals, like yesterday I went to see one hospital, Nairobi Women's. Again, I went around with a guy, the CEO, and I could see multiple areas that he requires people like yourselves to go and help innovate within that ecosystem. Again, within hospitals today, if you look at Kenya today, I'm doing a project in Kenya today with General Electric, helping implement 100 hospitals in terms of managed services, of radiology infrastructure. I've gone around the country, from Kilifi to Marsabit. And one thing that is very evident, in all these hospitals, most of them have got collection points, money collection points. You know, if you want to pay for an X-ray, you walk to the X-ray point, there's a collection person there. You want to pay for casualty, there's another collection person there. We want to pay for drugs, there's another collection point. So every place there is queues. And my thinking is, why is it so complicated to go to a hospital in Kenya? The hospitals are fully not automated. So my question is, there's so much opportunity in this country in terms of transforming this country that I can barely think what is holding you back from being successful in that area. Again, hospitals, massive opportunity. The same CEO told me, we used to have a big problem with our stocks, like your pharmacy stocks. So what they do now, everything is just in time. By having implemented back office system, now they're able to almost have like an Uber system that is able to deliver for them drugs on a daily basis from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock in the morning. They have a truck that goes for filling drugs in all their stores. So their supply chain systems and that of the drug distributor are all interconnected. They have managed to increase their drug sales by 3 times, and they're more profitable because the amount of cost that they would ideally have on their books in terms of assets, in terms of stock, what we call drug stock, has dramatically reduced. So in terms of capital, you can see that CEO, if you're going to this kind of solution, that would have been a great place for you to innovate. Sometimes you look for sexy things to innovate for, but sometimes the problem you need to solve is what you need to look. You need to identify the problem to solve. Then you look at healthcare providers, doctors, for instance. If you look at doctors today, if you go to any doctor, any small doctor today, what kind of systems do they use internally to manage customers? It's your PA. If you ever go to a doctor today, they generally have a secretary. She has a book. In the book, there are many business cards. She writes your name, she writes everything, and she says, you've come, yes, your name is Mike Macharia. She quickly puts you in. Very few of them have even looked at ways to automate their back office systems. Very few. Again, great opportunity. How many GP services are there in the country? How many private doctors are there? How many? Very many. Is that correct? Today we have cloud technology. You can be able to pay, you can build products that people pay as a service. Maybe I'm giving you guys too many ideas for the hackathon, but it's okay, right? These are things you need to think about. And if I was a judge in a hackathon, you need to solve real problems. If you come and present stuff that I can't relate and you're not solving problems, it doesn't matter how sexy the technology looks like. I will still not look at it, right? So you need to understand what kind of problems are you trying to solve. The next thing is you've got, I'm not going to go through all this, home care. You've got people we call integrators, who operate, for instance, clearing houses, billing. Some hospitals have automated their billing because you've got health providers, insurance providers. On the other side, you've got hospitals, and then you also got caregivers. So you've got people who are in a very, very mature market. This is a massive, massive, massive business. Okay? So today, one of the businesses you could think about, you're going to see clearing houses, the way you have a clearing house, bank clearing house, for patient records and patient services. It's a massive opportunity that lies here. Again, another massive opportunity in terms of electronic medical records. Today in Kenya, do we have any electronic medical records? Do we? Where does it sit? It's siloed. It's a massive opportunity again to create a cross-sectional medical record that you could still maintain individual systems, but eventually Patricia, who is in this system, eventually it could be a system that integrates to know this is Patricia here and this is Patricia in this area. Because how do you make decisions as a ministry if you do not have critical information? It's a challenge. And that is part of the challenges that are ailing us in Africa, because how do you do planning? So a lot of decisions we make in health are very thumbsuck, you know? This will happen, we suspect this will happen. That's the reality today. And to me, I think those are all problems waiting to be solved. So you have a great idea. How do you get enough people to follow and say this can be done? So I figured out, how do I go sell the idea to government? It took 4 years to sell this idea to government that actually Huduma services makes sense. 4 years to sell this idea. So today when I look at Huduma services, and we now use the post office, which you know the post offices are almost dying, right? What was the use of a post office? Nothing. So today the post office, in a government office, ideally the most attractive office for a citizen. Why? Because I realized what is the problem you need to solve? Efficiency. You need to reduce corruption. You want a one-stop shop to get government services. So what happens? You go to a Huduma center in a post office, you get your services, there's no corruption, because you create systems that manage or remove the element of corruption. So today what happens? When I go in the morning, when I look at a Huduma center, and I see queues and queues in all Huduma centers across the country, and I realized it was a very simple innovation that enabled this transformation. So that's how you need to think. So the next element is to figure out yourselves, how do you see in this whole ecosystem, where do you see your value? That's the first question you need to ask. Now you need to look at this situation at a Kenyan level and figure out, at a Pan-African level, the problems I solve in Kenya could ideally be problems that could be replicated or solutions for other countries. And I can assure you, whatever problem is in Kenya in this ecosystem appears in Zambia, is applicable in Angola, is applicable in Ethiopia. If you just take East Africa has got more than 300 million people. So your idea could eventually scale to 300 million people. But you need to figure it out which part of the ecosystem are you going to play. And down here you see they're the big boys. Here you've got the people like Siemens, GE, Toshiba. These guys manufacture medical equipment, massive medical equipment. But the medical equipment has to communicate. So you feel the likes of Cisco, the likes of Safaricom. For instance, the project we're doing today is a project today. You can go to Machakos, you can go to Kakamega, get an X-ray, ultrasound, MRI. Is that correct? But that same MRI is transferred through a Safaricom link such that you're able to have teleradiology. So you're able to have a radiologist in Machakos reading an image for somebody in Kakamega. It's a massive opportunity. But that opportunity is at a scale, it's a massive millions of dollars, and the likes of GE and ourselves are able to come into a market and transform a market by building this infrastructure. That is at a big scale. It's massive scale at a country level, right? So this is how you need to see where do you play, and where is your ecosystem play. And the next thing is, once you've figured out the big picture, the next thing is to figure out innovation. How do you innovate? What is your innovation ecosystem? I think most of us, there are multiple reasons and multiple areas in which we innovate. You can either innovate at a process level, you can innovate at an offering level, you can operate at a delivery and a finance level. Most of us in this, at a country level, in terms of innovators, we innovate at a product level. But you can also innovate at a process level, right? You don't have to build a product. You can innovate at a process level. And I'll give you different examples. For instance, process. What's the biggest issue in hospitals today in the medical industry? Process. Customer flow, patient workflow. Recently, I saw somebody on Facebook saying that, look, my son is sick. Which hospital do you know has got the shortest queue? That was a Facebook message. The guy received 100 comments. Please go to Mpisha, this clinic. So please go here. And then somebody even offered, please drive out of town to Thika. There'll be less people. So I really figured out there's a problem really. So patient flow in this marketplace is a big, big problem. You guys are medical practitioners, some of you, right? It's a big issue. Patient flow. So how can we solve, what kind of solutions can you solve around process? What kind of solutions can you solve around even process within a hospital to get drugs? Now, the hospitals I was referring to in the counties, if you have to go everywhere and pay and keep paying, what happens? What if I created a centralized platform where you pay once, okay, or you pay whichever way you go, it doesn't matter, you can pay as you go along without having to queue to go back to the counter and pay. So this is an area you can innovate around. We look at the next area, which is platforms, payment platforms. In terms of basic features here, let's look at service. This area. This is an area you can look at. How can I create payment platforms uniquely focused and targeted towards the medical industry? So all of you like doing payment gateways. I think one of the best things in this country for innovators is I'm going to do a payment something, M something. Is that correct? This could be an interesting way for you to look at how can I create settlement. I'll give you an example. For instance, Turkey, for instance. I went to Turkey recently and I was looking at their whole pharmaceutical network. You know what happens is in Kenya today, you can go to any chemist and get drugs. Is there a prescription? There's no prescription, right? How do you know that drug is not fake? How do you know it's not fake? So today, in a country like Turkey with a population of 80 million, they have a platform called Drug Trace and Track, where every drug, whether manufactured locally, manufactured internationally, okay, across the whole country is tracked. I'm able to know that Patricia consumed this Panadol. And I'm able to know this Panadol was manufactured in this batch, by this supplier, by this distributor, in this warehouse, across the whole country. That can happen. That happens real time. That platform gets per day something like 5 million, 10 million transactions. Because it means every pharmacy point of sale system is integrated to that centralized clearinghouse. So the country at any one moment can know where any sort of drugs are across the country. So if a bunch of drugs was wrongly imported into the country, the government is able to go across the country and collect those drugs because they know where those drugs are, right? Is it happening in Kenya? Is it? Is that an opportunity for you? Whoever does that will be a billionaire, okay? Because you could charge per transaction, right? You could charge 10 cents for every transaction. That is an example of how you could look at to enhance a product offering. Let's look at something else. Let's look at information in terms of big data. Customer service. Another area of innovation is around big data. Is that correct? Big data, again, big data is a big capability in terms of how do you create big data and how do you leverage big data across an ecosystem. Let's look at delivery. Under delivery, you've got multiple things. This is why you find a lot of people building mobile apps, right, that touch the customers. Is that correct? You have mobile apps that integrate with the customer. This is where you talk about channel and where you have brand. This is where you touch the customer through mobile devices, through even mobile devices. You talked about mobile devices. These are big area around mobile devices. Under finance, you could also find different ways in where you sort out finance issues within an ecosystem. I mentioned to you about stocks. In this hospital. This is what they have done. They have created just-in-time stock reordering levels. So imagine whoever can build a just-in-time platform for stocks, what happens is you start understanding what kind of drugs in the country are moving. Now, if you have information today of what kind of drugs are moving in what hospitals, which ones are moving faster, which ones are moving slower, you'll almost be able to go to a hospital and say, or even to a pharmaceutical company and say, these are the kind of drugs you need to stock. Is that knowledge? Is that something you can talk to a CEO of a drug company? Will they pay for you? Will they pay you for it? They'll pay you for it. Because what you did, you built with an end in mind. So these are different ways of innovation. So you need to figure out across the value chain, what are you trying to innovate for? And that is very, very important for you to figure that out, because inside out or outside in, you need to figure out your innovation capability. Which area within that life cycle are you trying to innovate for? And this is important for you to think through that. The next area is, what is the output? This is another picture like from the US. The output is, all these are companies that have been very successful in multiple building blocks. The total, like this is a typical way we saw. These are 509 companies, startup companies that are doing very well. Total amount of funding is $7.5 billion that have gone into these companies. All these companies are trying to solve something critical within the ecosystem. These companies are the ones that are integrating their solutions onto the Android, into the Apple phone. So when the Apple is shipping, these are the companies that ideally you find this application already embedded onto the Apple phone. Now you need to figure out amongst yourself, where do you want to play? Within your own innovation, which of these ecosystem areas do you want to play? Because even Kenya is going to immediately, at some point, play into this segment. Now you need to ask yourself, as you play here, are you playing at a global level? Are you playing local level? Are you playing just at a national level? Or at a county level? Or at a one hospital level? Where do you play? So you need to start building businesses that can scale beyond markets. Is that correct? So you have to think, even as you localize your businesses, as you build your business, you need to think, how do I scale these businesses and how do I create brands that are long-term? Now, the next thing is, what is the big issue? What's the next big thing? The next big thing is, yes, we have agreed. You have a big idea. What's the big challenge? Once this big idea comes, what we don't see is what you have to go through to execute. Yes, you're going to have a great hackathon the next 3 days, right? You're going to win an award, right? What happens next? That was 1% inspiration. Now 99% is hard work. You need to start thinking about intellectual property, IP. You need to think about patents, right? How do you structure all these ideas you have? How do you look at intellectual property? How do you deal with failure? You may fail today. Does that mean you don't do the next big thing? Some of the best innovations was because people failed fast. They failed again. By the third time, they became very successful, right? Then how do you deal with capital? Because you have a great idea. How do you rally people to put money in your business for you to expand? The next thing is key customers. Who is going to be your first key customer? And beyond yourself, I think all of you, I asked, how many of you are entrepreneurs? Some put their hand. Now what will happen, as you become bigger, you need to start thinking about talent. It's not about you. You cannot be the one lone guy in the office who does coding, who does finance, who does human resource, who does clean the office, also closes the office. Is that correct? You have to figure out, how do you scale? And how do you develop teams? And how sometimes can you plug yourself in a much bigger ecosystem for you to be successful? And also, how does government policy change the way you do your business? Because sometimes you become successful because of government policy. But sometimes government policy could be what could kill your business. Because what you're currently trying to offer, the government comes and puts a rule that says this is not applicable anymore. What happens in that case? So these are things you have to think about as you build a business and as you come with some of these smart ideas. But to do that, we also need to start understanding what's the difference between invention and innovation. It's very, very important. I think invention, and we need to do it, creates an ability. Invention, you think, you dream. That dream may not necessarily, it's not bankable, could not even be a bankable idea. Is that correct? For instance, what's the difference between Google Glass and Apple iPhone? Which of them is an innovation? Which of those two ideas is invention? Google Glass, is it invention or innovation? Apple, innovation. So what has Apple done that is superior to the guy who built the first phone? Who is that? What have they done differently? What have they done? They understood the customer. Is that correct? They understood the customer experience. That's what they have built on. Remember we talked about innovation. For them it was about customer experience. But there are guys who came up with sexy phones, right? But nobody took those phones because they did not have the customer touch. So you need to understand, invention creates an ability, but innovation takes that ability and allows it to scale and create some kind of market impact. So you need to be thinking, the innovation that you're building, what in terms of impact, what kind of impact can it provide at a global or Africa level? So the first thing is what we said, and we'll have to think about what are the 3 steps you need to think about, even as you build your application for the next 3 days, because I think you guys have a great opportunity. When I started my business 15 years ago, we never had this kind of initiatives. This would have been, for me as a 25-year-old, this would have been heaven. Because I never had these options. I never had Patricia in my life. I never had Duke in my life. Okay? I was all alone in this jungle. Is that correct? I used to wake up in the morning and figure out, how do I sail into these murky waters? Is that correct? Because everybody believed there's nothing here. Today, you guys have got a great opportunity. You've got accelerators like Strathmore here. You've got people like Duke. You've got people like Patricia, all those people who are willing, iHubs and the rest. So today you have no choice, or I would even say you have lots of choices, but you don't have a reason to fail or not to start something. And for that, the first thing we need to look, and we talked about it, is looking at the need, the unmet need, the consumer insight. And what Total Health is doing is realizing that the maternal healthcare industry is a big industry, and that is the unmet need. Is that correct? What is the unmet need? It's a lady out there who doesn't know when to go and see the doctor. Is that correct? So he advises that lady that information. That's an unmet need. And the next thing you need to look at is consumers first, sales partners second. And I'll explain what I mean by this. Most of us make the classic mistake. You build a platform, then you go to Safaricom and tell Safaricom, by the way, I've got a great platform. It needs to sit in Safaricom. Is that correct? And the CEO looks at you and tells you, what's wrong with this guy? Is that correct? Or in the innovation teams. What happens? You need to realize that your distribution network will only keep your product if they believe your product will create value for their main product. And I give an example. How many of you know a company called M-Copper? How many of you know M-Copper? Why would Safaricom care about M-Copper? Why? Why would they stock M-Copper products in their shops? It's because M-Copper has a SIM card being built within their device, right? The more M-Copper sales they make, the more Safaricom makes money. Is that correct? Because it becomes the biggest airtime contributor, pay platform contributor, because you have to pay micro loans. Is that correct? That's what they do. So Safaricom has all the right and all the motivation in all their shops to stock M-Copper products. That's the reality. But what the challenge we do, you create a product, then you hope, you say, my product is so good, you guys have to see a reason to put it in your shelves. But those guys have no reason to put the product in their shelves because they don't see the reason. As a matter of fact, you are sort of crowding their market space. So you need to figure out, if you're going to be looking for a distribution network for your product, you need to figure out why should anybody care to put their product in the shelf, somebody who already has a network to sell through, right? And the next thing is, you need to dream big. And today we've got all these sectors, healthcare, insurance, job creation. These are all great sectors for you to dream big. If I look at health today, you have no reason not to be successful. The opportunities are incredible, right? All across. Whether you go to Loitoktok, you go to Turkana, the governor there has got 5 hospitals. And trust me, those hospitals, they just get drugs from KEMSA. They drop the drugs in the hospitals. Do you think they know how the drugs are spent? Who will tell me yes, they know how the drugs are spent? So the drugs are just dropped. Is that correct? Who are doctors here? Is that the reality? Now, is another an opportunity? So today the governors are buying lots of drugs. Now, what if they just bought drugs on time, just in time? It could save that governor because he doesn't have to keep that stock in there. That's a whole opportunity for you. So nobody can tell me, but this kind of opportunities in the UK, this is already done. When you go to the UK, these are already systems are already implemented. You go to the US, they're already implemented. But in Africa, they implemented. So you don't have to sort of reinvent. Sometimes everything you're trying to do has been done elsewhere and done even better than you think. So the challenge for you is to figure out, why can't I copy, but copy well? It's okay to copy. Don't try and reinvent. Just copy, but do a very good job at it. Don't feel like a hero that I need to build this product. I'm the only guy with this product. That's nonsense. Figure out, can I copy, but copy very well. So some of you guys here trying to innovate, just figure out, go and Google and figure out, what can I copy, but copy very well. And copy fast enough. And do a better job. Now that's how you need to start thinking. Then we said, we don't have to invent, right? But we have to solve a big problem. So, and I think today, when I look at health in Africa, it's a massive problem out there. Our delivery methods for health in Africa are still extremely archaic. I give an example. One of the projects that the government has done now is realized there's no point of buying medical equipment. Why are we buying medical equipment? We're not even good at managing this equipment. Anyways, half the equipment we buy is broken. So they decided, look, hold on, which companies in Kenya are willing to come and take 10-year or 7-year long-term views and give us services for 7 years. Is that correct? With medical equipment. Now, what has the government done? Overnight, they were able to equip 100 hospitals. So where they would have spent $500 million day one, they're going to spend this over 7 years, which is close to, let's say, $80 million a year. So as opposed to carrying a capex cost in your books for 7 years, what do? You say, all I want is a service. What has happened? Government anyway was losing $40 million of that money by having people, unscrupulous suppliers, who would be selling equipment that would eventually be offline within 6 months. So what has government managed to do? It has managed to create real-time, pushing the responsibility to the vendors to carry the responsibility. But at the same time, what has happened? Vendors who are creative and clever enough have overnight had a massive footprint of medical infrastructure that would have taken them a long time to build out. You understand what has happened in the marketplace? So today you're beginning to see market dynamics shifting because the companies that own those projects all of a sudden are hiring plenty of people. They are building massive call centers because now they've got scale. But those guys had to rethink the financial model, because how do you give government an instrument? How do you give them equipment for 7 years and then pay as a service? So you have to go to innovate round my financial structure, my government guarantees. You have to almost rethink your way of doing business. So again, those are kind of opportunities. So you have got to be big enough to, and you have to think in that transformational nature. Now, finally, in terms of closing, I want to leave you with this, which is something I believe in. I think, and this is not only about Kenya, I think Kenya especially is building a new generation of outward-looking African entrepreneurs, people like yourself, who see problems as opportunities, okay? So we are happy to be in a place where we no longer see hopelessness, but we see opportunity. And in that shared purpose that we have as individuals, entrepreneurs, we see a greater good. So today, as part of the successes that you do have to be collective successes. So when I look at total health and your business and the next business, together you're creating a fundamental change in a society. You're making a difference. So it's not just about making money. You've got to think about what is my common vision and what is that bigger vision that drives me to transform or to become an entrepreneur. That to me is what gives me the success that I'm a successful business. So it's not about money. It's about transforming communities, but you also need to look at the bigger calling for the business that you do. So even as you build great products, you also need to understand how do you transform those products beyond just economic value. Thank you.